Hey guys, it's me, Video Game Viggy, and today we're going to be talking about Undertale. Undertale is an RPG that focuses on character dialogue and player agency. That is, the ability for you, the gamer, to make decisions that skew the direction of the story in all its parts. In this world, you can choose to talk your way out of every fight or slay each adversary that comes your way. The choice is up to you. The game takes a drastic turn depending on which path you choose. Undertale is one of my favorite games of all time for these reasons, and I went into this game completely blind, and I don't regret it for a second. Undertale meshes a variety of different game genres together. You got RPGs, you got bullet hell games, you got dogs with battle axes, you got puzzle dungeons, you got role-playing. This game has it all. From a visual standpoint, the game looks a lot like Earthbound for the SNES, as game creator Toby Fox has cited the game as his main inspiration for Undertale. The 8-bit music and character sprites really transport you to a simpler time in video game history, where side-scrollers rule the world. Give this music a listen. The game follows Frisk, you, the protagonist, as you fall down a hole into the underground, a world of monsters and mayhem, and your main goal in the game is to find your way back to the surface. But there are all these other smaller goals as well that the player can choose to seek out. Through these passive narrative elements, as we'll call them, the player can interact with so many incredible NPCs. We meet Toriel, the kind cow lady who guides us through the tutorial, get it? Flowey, who introduces us to the game's mechanics, Sans and Papyrus, the happy skeletal brothers, Undyne, the fish warrior, and among others, but more on them later. This game will make you feel filled with determination or feel crushed by the evil you did not know was within you, and that dichotomy of emotions creates a thrilling, interactive story. Flowey explains how the stats EXP and LV stand for experience points and love, respectively, and as the player makes their way through the game slaying enemies, these stats will increase. These are standard gaming notations for progress in games we know outside of Undertale. So, to the player, these make sense. However, when you get to the end of Undertale, Sans explains how these definitions are completely inaccurate, for these terms actually represent execution points and level of violence earned in the game. He describes it as a way of measuring someone's capacity to hurt. The player's gut instinct to trust these traditionally defined stats can fuel a player's agency in an accidentally bad way, resulting in some very consequential actions. As these play elements increase, the enemies begin to fear the human protagonist and actually refuse to interact with the player. This is an extreme form of artistic anarchy in game design, where a game with so many endings and options leads to the player taking complete control of the story. What's interesting, though, is that Undertale is a game that encourages artistic anarchy and allows the player all of these options to really flesh out who the protagonist, and in turn, the player, really is. Toby Fox chose to leave Frisk, the protagonist, both gender ambiguous as well as mute, so that the player can really determine their disposition as they play through the game. If you play it cool, other NPCs will like Frisk. Play it mean, and well, you're gonna have a bad time. The first character you meet in Undertale is Flowey, the talking sunflower who guides you through the core battle mechanics of the game. Watch how this interaction plays out. Here we see the two most extreme gameplay options in front of us. The pacifist route that you can choose to go through, as Toriel explains, and the genocide route if you follow in Flowey's footsteps. Most players on their first playthrough of the game will complete a neutral run, where they combine both of these types of routes. They may slay a few enemies here and there while being courteous to the NPCs that they run into. The player's agency is what's going to shape this narrative to their liking. As you continue through the underground searching for a way back to the surface, you meet so many zany characters. Sans, Papyrus, Undyne, Alphys, Mettaton, not to mention the slew of supplementary characters you run into as well. Looking at this game under Shell's lens of the weirdest thing, Undertale is full to the brim with all of these wacky characters, and the player can either accept them for all of their weirdness or decide to commit the unthinkable. Yes, you can even kill Toriel at the beginning if you're feeling ever so heartless. The charm and liveliness of this game would not exist if not for these characters and their quirks, as they fuel the player's agency throughout. For instance, you can either think Alphys' obsession with anime is endearing or downright annoying. It's up to you. A lot of the relationships you create with these NPCs come from what's known as passive narrative elements. It's not required for the main story that you go on a date with Papyrus and eat spaghetti together, but he'll learn to love and accept you as an outsider in their monster world if you do these things. You have to actively seek out these characters to spend time with them and form these relationships, and it really adds to your gameplay experience as you venture on. The main narrative, Get to the Surface, is loose enough on Shell's string and pearl game narrative structure that the players can really focus on those pearls, the options to go off track and form these relationships. These characters interact with you differently based on how you've approached the game thus far. Check out this side-by-side comparison of a conversation with Papyrus, one in which comes from not hurting a single enemy, whereas the other comes from slaying every enemy thus far. If you decided to play a genocide route, played all the way to the end, restarted the game to then play a pacifist route, you could get all the way to the end of the game, finish the pacifist route, or so you think, as the game has a hidden cutscene at the very end that makes you remember that you, the player, do not deserve the forgiveness that you have tried to redeem. The game is permanently altered to the point where the player can never truly reach a successful pacifist run because it always remembers the evil that you've committed previously. Pretty dark, right? The game teaches you not only to be kind to others, but to be wary of how your actions affect other characters in the grand scheme of gaming. Undertale either makes you feel like the absolute hero or the absolute villain. The game presents you with the process of how the mechanics work, and it's up to the player to use those principles to create data in the form of interpersonal relationships with NPCs that drive the story forward. After all, storytelling is self-expression, and the way you choose to walk through the underground becomes a reflection of what type of gamer you are. Do you kill with no remorse, or do you hear out your options? Sometimes, all the enemy needs is a hug or a fun joke to get them on your side. While Flowey presents the idea that the world is kill or be killed right at the beginning, you don't have to follow in his flowery footsteps. You can carve your own path for success. The player has the utmost control in who lives or dies, and your agency will always weigh heavy no matter how many times you replay the game. Whichever way you play it, it'll take a lot of determination, a lot of butterscotch pie, and a whole lot of love. Real love, not level of violence, to figure out who you are as a protagonist.